Hi, and welcome back to My Clarity After Scientology. Tonight, we're actually going to do our very first Q&A. So this is going to be Scientology Q&A Part 1. I've put together some questions, actually some very good questions over the last couple of videos that have been asked. Just 5, 6 of them. We'll go through them. It'll be a shorter video than I normally do, which I really want to keep these 15 minutes to half an hour. But a couple of announcements. Some of might seen that I actually did a video this morning, which I had to actually take down because I had said something that I really shouldn't have said, and so just makes things a little bit easier to just reshoot the video. Plus, the lighting's a little bit better at night for me. I don't look so busted, so it was good to actually just reshoot the video, anyways. To announce and re-announce that we have a Twitter account, My Clarity SCN, at MyClaritySCN on Twitter. Please go ahead and follow me there. Announcements will be done through there. Once a new video goes up, it'll obviously go up onto Twitter right away, and we will see how that goes. And maybe we'll possibly do some live videos, which I'd actually really like to have that interaction with other people asking questions. I see that those go very well. And also keep an eye out in the next couple of days. I did a video with, actually an interview with Aaron Smith-Levin last night, going over what I did, basically why I really got out of Scientology. Kind of a little bit more of a thorough story. It's something I did not want to talk about before, but because of this season of Scientology and the Aftermath, episodes 2 and 3, those hit me home. Those hit home personally. So it was time to talk about what had gone on in my history in Scientology. So that should be out in the next day or two. In fact, actually, I'll put up something on I'll use social media and put up something on Twitter when it comes out. All right, good. So let's go over a couple of questions that we have here. The first two questions are kind of statements that are asking questions. So I'm going to kind of just go through them very generally, give an explanation of what they're asking, and then we'll go ahead and answer the questions. So this person says that it's always fun to hear about adjustment to normal WOG life after leaving staff or leaving Scientology. Like quality versus quantity of work, translations to Scientology terms, having a whole hour for lunch. So I'll take these each up individually. Okay, so quantity versus quality of work is very interesting because I work as a web developer, and obviously we have deadlines to get certain things done. We work just very quickly. We work in what's called a Scrum environment or an Agile environment. A Scrum would be it'd be a 2-week layout of work that we need to get done. Point systems applied to each one of the different projects that we're working on. So, there's a lot of similarities with Scientology because being on staff, when you have a particular job, you're being rated by your statistics, hourly, daily, and weekly in some cases, but usually on a weekly basis. And there was always a lot of pressure that if your stats went down, I gave an example earlier of a registrar. His job is to sign up people for services, and his statistic would be gross income, the amount of money he brings into the organization, and he could have a really, really good week. He could have been doing work that took him a few weeks to finally get done, and he could have a really good high week, and then the next week kind of goes back to where it normally is. And the hard part of the pressure that was put on that was that fact that it went down, and the pressure was put on you. Why did your stats go down? And a lot of just evaluate. Years and years and years and years in this, it just gets really. It just got really difficult. And I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about someone pushing me to get my work done, because I have always worked very hard most of my life. But when you're being ripped apart because your stats are down and constantly having to look interiorize into yourself, looking like, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? You do get beat up after a while. The system I work in now is, if we get it done, we get it done. If we don't, we just add it to the next scrum. And we actually have nice meetings at the end of the 2 weeks, where it's a retrospect where we sit and go over what was good and what was bad and what we can do to improve upon things. And it's always looked at as the group is responsible for what gets done and how we as a group can do it, not pointing out each individual person, and I have a 5 or 6, I think 6 or 7 people I actually work with. So it's, it's nice. It's nice knowing that I'm not having to be rushed to get things done, that I can actually take my time and make sure I'm actually delivering a good product to people when I build a website. So that's been very nice actually. But I'm also, it gives me a lot of time in order to develop my skills as well. And it's not always in this big rush. And, we're not looking at a week by week basis. Sometimes we're looking at a 6 month, we'll lay out like the different scrums for the next 6 months. So it's nice that you can do that. You can really actually plan in life now. Let's see. So translation of Scientology terms into skills. I still think in Scientology terminology sometimes. That's never going to stop, because there were some parts, and I've said in my earlier videos, there were some parts about Scientology that I really enjoyed. I liked the long hours and the long days and the challenges of everything. I saw that the Scientology terminology really kind of abridged language and made it faster to get things, faster to communicate about things. And obviously, there were times that things would slip out of my mouth, and especially when I first got back into the workforce 10 years ago. So that took a little bit of adjustment. The last question I like here is like how is it having a whole hour for lunch? I don't take a whole hour for lunch. I actually work as a consultant. I prefer to sit at my desk and eat lunch, do some work while I'm there. It gives me time to relax and think about what I'm doing. And I also have to look at the fact that any minute I'm not at work, I don't get paid. So, and it's understood the work that I'm allowed to be able to do that. But I've never. It kills my wife because she's always asking me, "Hey, do you want to go out for lunch?" No, I'm gonna sit at my desk and work. And sometimes I run out and do errands, and it's nice having the freedom to do that. It's nice showing up late for work and not being yelled at, or having a knowledge report written on you or something like that. That's nice. It's nice calling in and taking a day off, because I just feel like taking a day off, or getting sick and not having to be questioned 700 times of who am I, who's the suppressive person around me or something like that. That's always really nice. Next question. Any insight on the amount of snitching in forms of KRs that went on in the Buffalo org, which is the org I was the staff member at, so far as volumes, day and week, how trivial some of them would get, and did you keep any copies? Well, first, no, I don't have any copies. I've been out of Scientology and off of staff for over 10 years, well over 10 years now. And even if I had any of that stuff, it's a long story, but I left Buffalo very quickly, so I only brought home a few things with me. But I don't think I really kept a lot of copies of them. As far as the snitching culture, we really knowledge reports were written kind of on a normal basis. If you see something out, you would write it up. There were a few instances where, like I always kind of felt when I was on staff that if I wasn't producing and being a great staff member and going along with the rules all the time, the knowledge reports would start to build up. It just seemed like everyone was, not everyone, but the few people around me would be watching kind of every move that I was making and kind of like trying to find something to write up, because, well, obviously things aren't going well, so you must be out ethics. So we need to find a way to get your ethics in. So, one thing that kind of sticks in my memory pretty solidly, mainly because it was used against me on numerous occasions, was a time where one of my staff members was who was kind of equal to me when I was the executive director, was talking to one of our other staff members who ran our kiosk out at the mall where we would sell Dianetics books. they were talking, and they had a really nice talk, and they finished up, and I saw them talking, and I came over, and because I had a couple quick questions for her, because I was curious about what was going on with regards to the fundraising for paying for this kiosk. And in the middle of the conversation, she just got upset and started crying. I still to this day don't even know really what happened, but I was able to talk her back and kind of like clear up what was going on with her. So she felt better, and we finished the conversation, and she was happy again. But of course, this person, my equal in the org, happens to walk by when she's crying, and makes note of this and writes up a KR, or knowledge report. And the something that's not ever, I've never actually seen anyone mention, but there is a policy in Scientology with knowledge reports that if you feel that something was written up against you, that you have a right to counter it and have it removed. You have a right to request that the ethics officer remove it from your ethics file. And I had actually done this in this particular situation. I'd gotten the person to write a report as well to counter what was said in my report, the one that was written on me, and they refused to remove it from my file because it was an indication of me as a person and how I would upset other staff members. There were no other reports that I'm aware of that would indicate that I was rude to my staff and would upset them. A lot of times people would be cowards and would not get me a copy, because when you wrote up the knowledge report, you were supposed to copy the person wrote up the knowledge report. You were supposed to be able to face your accuser, type of situation. But they just, I'm sure there were plenty of reports written up on me that I never, ever, ever saw a copy of, just because of the way some things were used against me towards the end of my career in Scientology. But yeah, that was brought up, that we have reports that you upset staff members, and when I would ask, well, you say staff members, that means it's more than once, because I only remember one thing ever being written up. And they're like, so you're kind of using a generality, so show me some proof. And I could never get that from anyone. But yeah, snitching culture, it really wasn't, I never really looked at it, because the reports I would see were pretty accurate. A lot of my staff were pretty tolerant. If someone was blowing some steam off, they let you blow some steam off. Things should have been written up, maybe. But sometimes you need to have that safe ability to talk to somebody and not have everything written up. But sometimes it was, too. So the next question, this is from now a new person. It says, now, please comment on how many people there are in the Sea Org / on staff, or just regular public Scientologists that have left Scientology. The second part is, it seems that orgs are suffering. Most buildings are empty due to lack of new recruits. Okay, so this is kind of a two-parter. And a lot of this is going to be my opinion on things from my observations. Most of the people that I know have left Scientology are Sea Org members, mainly because they are people that I knew of because they were in senior management positions, or people that I worked around. I can really... Other than the obvious ones, I probably only know about 5 staff members, or 5 Sea Org members that have left. I've heard of a lot of staff members that I trained with down at Flag during the Golden Age of Tech evolution, Flag being the flag service organization down in Tampa, Florida. Back in 1993 to 95, there was this whole evolution of training. I was there 95 to 96. There was this whole evolution to train up people for the Golden Age of Tech. Some public, I am friends with public from Buffalo that just kind of never went back. They never officially, announced their disconnection of Scientology. They just aren't there anymore. I know some people that are. I know a woman who actually just finished OT7 from outside of Scientology. I think through the free zone or something like that. So, there is a culture out there. I'm sure there's a lot of people. I just, I've been away for 10 years. So, I'm not really in the mix of it right now. So, I guess we'll see people as things go. Seems like orgs are suffering. Most buildings are empty. Yes, most buildings are empty because they put small organizations into large buildings. That pretty much explains why these churches look so empty. I have a lot of kind of theories about what happened, because Scientology at one point really was booming. I know specifically in Buffalo, I've seen the early 70s and 80s, 70s and 80s, the statistics for bodies in the shop, gross income, student points, well done auditing hours. These are all statistics that show you the kind of the activity that's really going on in the organization, kind of all self-evident. Something you don't know that I just said, just please make a comment and we'll clear it up. They were booming. They were doing really well. And there has been a complete demise of Scientology since, I've kind of nailed it down since about 1983. And I hope to do a video on that one of these days. The problem is that the main reference I have for it doesn't exist. And I had it in Buffalo. I had found it. It was the briefing, mission holders briefing that was done in 1983. I actually had a transcript for it. It was written, and I hope anyone who's an exec in Scientology and management knows what I'm talking about. And if you have a copy of it, that would be great. I highly doubt it. It's the one that had the story of a squirrel that L. Ron Hubbard wrote regarding his name just slipped my mind. The senior CS in the late 70s and early 80s. I'll remember it. Okay, so yeah, they're empty, and I feel from what I've heard, and again, this is where I said my opinion is going to come in as well, that Scientology is really kind of focusing on money and making money. I had mentioned this in my other video about ideal orgs, and regarding Buffalo, was that Buffalo actually owned its own building. It owned that building, and the building that is now that was purchased with the money that we received from the city buying that building, the church took and then bought the building. So now they own the building, which was kind of weird because it really was encouraged by L. Ron Hubbard from what I remember. Don't quote me, but from what I remember, that the church would own its own building. The individual church. They are franchises, by the way. They're legally separate entities. Each individual church is its own separate entity. Legally, its own separate entity. Okay, so what I'm seeing now these days is that more and more and more that the attention is being put on making money and making money for the IS and making money for ideal orgs. I've even heard, and someone please keep me honest about this, that they're not even these other orgs that haven't been built yet. They're fundraising internationally now for these buildings, not within the areas. Like, I'm just picking on Cleveland. I don't even know if there's a church in Cleveland. But let's just say Cleveland. That they're not just getting the parishioners together and raising the money. That they're now fundraising. The IS is fundraising for people. But again, so someone can keep me honest on that. So yeah, the tech standards are very low. I don't really know much about the Golden Age Tech 2. I guess I will have to ask some people about that. But I know that they're, from briefings I received from Mr. Miscavige while the ideal org in Buffalo was being created, there were some insinuations that the grade chart was being changed that, I don't know. I guess I'll have to be enlightened. Maybe I could do a video with somebody on that and they can enlighten me on that. This question I love, because I actually have an answer. I actually have an exact answer to this. So did any aid workers during 9/11 get affected from the debris like NYC firefighters and cops? What they're referring to on this question is that it was said by the church that they had volunteer ministers that were working down at Ground Zero. There were at least 2 or 3 photos that were taken of, you'll see somebody up in the rubble wearing the yellow volunteer minister shirt. Volunteer ministers is actually a pretty active group that will go into a devastated area, whether it's a hurricane, flooding area, earthquakes, 9/11, and they will be there to help people out by applying Scientology technology. Getting water, food, areas to rest. I mean, there is some good that they do with this group. But as far as the 9/11 workers or the 9/11 volunteer ministers, I don't know of anyone that was sick. But I also know that they weren't really in the ground zero area. They might have been around because it was a lot of people don't that particular area is kind of closed off by where the towers went down. Going west, you have the West Side Highway. You have a bike path, which we've heard about, which actually that was very close to where the terrorist attack was in New York on Tuesday. It was very close to very actually 4 blocks away from 9/11 site. So you got there, and then there's a set of buildings, and then there's the Hudson. So you go to, sorry, there's a flashlight outside the window here. So then you're going east, you're basically surrounded just by streets. So there's only kind of like, you can only do like kind of a U shape around there for the area, with the West Side Highway kind of being that blocking area. So there's really, there's not a lot. It was pretty controllable, let's just say. I actually have an uncle who just retired from the NYC fire department. He was a captain EMT. He was a trainer for the EMTs. He was there for over a month, helping to rescue people and helping to dig through the debris. I actually have I should have brought this with me, but I have a chunk of glass from the World Trade Center. And I had asked him at one point, did you ever see people with yellow t-shirts? Because they're pretty bright. Or working in the recovery area, or that were around the ground zero area. And he said no, that he never saw anyone, that he never interacted with any volunteer ministers. So suffice it to say, yeah, they were there, but the PR that they put behind being part of the whole 9/11 recovery program, I don't really completely 100% trust. Did anyone get affected from it? I don't really actually know. Up to the point where I left Scientology in 2006, I had not heard. I was pretty intimate with New York City staff, because I was working a little bit in their org, not as a staff member, but because our management office is in New York, or the management office is in New York. So I would be there a lot. So I would go over to New York org, which is right around the block from the management office. So kind of a long-winded way of saying no. Last question. What is a telex? I swear I defined what a telex is. Telex. Okay. A telex is basically an old version of email. Very simple. It's an internal communication system. By the time I had left staff, it was still completely computerized. There was a printer. And basically, it was a step up from a telegram. And it's just a teller typewriter where on one end someone types in the information and then hits, I guess there's some sort of send system. I'm talking about, I don't know how the old ways worked, but there was some sort of send system, and it went specifically to the church it was being routed to. This got computerized, more computerized than it had been before, around 1997, 98, 99, somewhere around there. You would basically, telex was always somebody from management telling you basically your orders, or asking you a particular question, getting information about what's going on with you on your post. So it had a system of CCing like you would do in an email. So basically, it's just a glorified email to today's account. I hope they moved over to some sort of internal email system, because it seems kind of silly. So yeah, that's that. Those are the 5 questions. Actually, someone had asked me a question earlier about Scientologists and the amount of money they spend in Scientology. Let me get that question narrowed down a little bit better, and I'll take care of it in the next one. So that is it. Again, we are now on Twitter at MyClaritySCN. We'll be putting this video up very shortly, and I hope everyone has a good evening.